Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video, we are going to look at 4 figures at one time. These are the next batch, or this is the next batch of Hiya's Predator figures. These are the Exquisite Mini line. These happen to be from Predator 2, which most people probably won't be familiar with, at least these characters, because they don't spend a lot of time in the movie, but Predator fans know what they are, and if you're watching this, I'm assuming you're a Predator fan, and if you're not, I'm not going to get into the fiction of why these characters look also very different, or at least some of them look very different from what you saw in the movie, as the main character anyway. But anyway, you guys are familiar with these by now, at least a little bit. I've reviewed most of them. You guys know Hiya sends them to me to review since I don't actually collect them. I don't collect this scale at all, but I know at least some of you guys do, and they like my reviews, even though sometimes I don't always say only nice things. It's one of those kind of situations. So I always appreciate a company who's happy to hear an honest review rather than basically paying for positive feedback. So I appreciate them for that, and they appreciate my reviews, and hopefully you guys appreciate them too. So we're just going to dive into this. We don't have the turntable going because there's too many of them. And then one of the reasons we're doing all 4 is in some ways they're almost the same, like the engineering on all of them is the same. So we're not going to go over it 4 different times and things like that. But we will just hop in by showing you the details of each one up close, and then I'll do kind of a ranking system like we normally do. So the first one we're going to look at is the Scout, and also every card being placed on the table. One of the reasons I'm doing it this way is I won't remember which ones are which if I don't leave their packages up and do them one at a time like this, unless I do them in separate videos. So this is going to be easier for me. So here's the Scout. He's probably closest to your traditional looking Predator, mostly yellow with some brown shading. I do think the paints are still really nice, no doubt, like the mesh, the fishnet stockings and things that they have on, still really nicely done, especially given the scale. So let's just mention the size real quick. They are very small. If you look, he's only about 11.5 centimeters, which makes him about 4.5 inches. Pretty close to that anyway. So this guy, lots of detail. They don't seem maybe quite as nice as some of the previous releases that they've shown, or that they've released, but still really, really solid for this scale. You definitely can't beat the paint job at this size. They're close to on par with the NECA Predators, which are 7-inch figures, and they have a little bit, more intricate paint for the shading and whatnot because they're a lot larger, but they're pretty much on par with that as far as the actual detail work goes. So that's pretty cool. So there's the Scout. You can see he's mostly yellow-brown with the gray armor. This guy is we'll just lay him down, the Stalker. He's a little bit more of like a biscuity color, and I would prefer a little bit more of consistency throughout. Like his shoulders are very dark compared to his biceps and chest, but all in all it's still fairly well done given the scale. The detail work is still very clean. The mesh is just really nicely done. So there's that guy. Just going to show you what they all look like real quick, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty. So this is the Lost Predator. He is basically an avocado with some red spots. His head has probably the most detail going on. And again, when you're up close like this, you can see that it's not super intricate, like the black around the eyes is just kind of a black spot rather than shading or anything. But in real life, since they're relatively small, you're not going to notice it as much. They definitely still look good. You always have to give a figure at this scale a little bit of extra leeway just because it's so dang small. So I think that's okay. I think what we have here is perfectly reasonable. Yes, it could be better, don't get me wrong. There's definitely room for improvement. I mean, they could look like the figures on the packaging. Let's focus on there. I mean, you can see they're just like super intricately painted on the packaging, and obviously that's not what we have on the final release, but I don't know that anybody actually expected it to be quite as good as the packaging. I would like to find it somewhere in the middle of what we actually get though in the packaging though. I think that'd be nice. And so there's the Shaman. Alright, so I'm going to say for the aesthetic across all of them, I'm just going to give 1 rating for all of them because they're all essentially the same, give or take, as far as the quality goes. So I'm going to give him an 8. At this scale, it's really nicely done. I do think they could squeak a little bit more out of them. Alright, as far as the accessories go, they all come with this display base with the little connecting pieces, and so you can connect them to each other if you want to. They have 1 peg in there to help them balance, though these guys do balance pretty well on their own this time. The Scout Predator comes with a crazy looking skull thing, a big spear, 2 extra hands, and a throwing disc. The Stalker Predator comes with an even crazier, bigger looking skull with a spear, 2 alternate hands, and a throwing disc. The Lost Predator comes with a little skull, a spear, a space pine cone, and a couple of hands and a machete. And then lastly, we have the Shaman Predator, who comes with a Xeno skull, a different spear, a space pine cone, and a couple of alternate hands. So that's definitely a nice enough spread across all the figures, or for each figure. I'll give them an 8 for accessories across the board. Very nicely done for this scale for sure. And now it's time to look at the articulation. The head and neck both feature ball pegs, so you can move the heads around pretty nicely. Of course, the more hair they have, like this guy has a lot of hair, it's a little bit more cumbersome, but it still has the same range, and it does still function fairly. Here, I can just show you real quick on this guy. The head still does function really nicely despite the hair. Definitely as much range as you would need, so that's just fine. No problems there. So we'll use this guy though, because he's the most classic looking one. He's my personal favorite, though I have to say this one looking like the Ghost Predator from the Keller line. I love it. I love the whitish predators. They're so cool looking. Anyway, so ball peg head and neck. Shoulders have your standard ball hinge shoulder. They do raise up, though the shoulder pads do get in the way, and they all have some form of shoulder pad, so just consider that an issue. But of course, full rotation, no problems there. You do have a bicep swivel under there. It's a little tricky to get to because they're so small, but you do have one. Single jointed elbow, not quite 90 degrees, a little bit of a bummer. You do get a rotation for the gauntlet swivel there. They have all have a ball peg wrist. This guy has the extendy blades, which is really nice, though nobody else has extendy blades, so that's a bummer for them. The diaphragm joint is a ball peg, and you get decent enough range out of it. There is no joint at the waist. The loincloth is a floating piece, and it's very flexible, so you can get the legs out to really wide, and then they do go pretty far forward, and that just moves out of the way. They go back not very much at all. You do have a thigh swivel, double jointed knees, which work very nicely. No boot swivel, but then you have a rotation at the ankle and a hinge. Again, that's not the right way to do it. It's kind of reversed. You want the hinge and then the swivel, but at least the hinge works this time, so that's pretty good. So all in all, the articulation is not bad on these guys. Given the scale and the level of detail, I think it's perfectly acceptable. So I will give the articulation a 7. I think that's definitely good enough. And so it's time for the final verdict. Across all of these guys, for what you're paying and what you're getting, I think it's perfectly acceptable. Yeah, they're very small figures and they definitely could be better, but that is the nature of very small figures. So I think some people are maybe a little bit too harsh on them, saying that they should be exactly as good as NECA's or whatever. NECA's figures are like 2.5 times as big as these. I don't remember the measurements, but it's something like that. So that's not really a fair comparison. And these guys are really good for their size. And I'm not just saying that because they sent them to me. Like, I don't even collect these, so I don't care that they sent them to me. It doesn't do me any good. You know, I'm just doing the reviews to do the reviews for you guys. So they're good figures for what they are. If I collected something like this, I would want these in my collection. I don't though, so I don't really care. But if you guys do, I think you'll be happy enough with the figure. So final verdict, I'm going to give them, for their scale, remember they're small, an 8 out of 10. They are really good at their scale, for sure, without a doubt. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by giving the video a thumbs up, and you might want to subscribe because I have new videos out just about every single day, and thousands already on the channel, so make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.